So the way that I think about anti-racism is pretty simple, and that is we don't talk enough about how white people are harmed by racism in very distinct and specific ways. They are deprived of the excellence and brilliance of those of us around them who have to fight white supremacy all the time. The profession and discipline that we love so much, being in service to others, witnessing their life transitions, witnessing the most vulnerable periods of their time. It's a gift to be able to be in service to families and communities in the way that we are. To not want to share that gift is selfish, which is incongruent with nursing principles.
Still rolling, right, guys?
Yeah, yep.
All right, we're good?
Yep.
I don't want to knock nothing down.
And just look right in the lens.
Halito.
So nursing,
Let's do that again.
okay.
The nursing profession is incredible. It's the most trusted profession in the United States.
Nurses are everywhere. I know nurses who work for NASA. Nurses are in the community as community health nurses.
A nurse is more than just a look. A nurse is someone that has passion.
We share a collective spirit of advocacy.
And really a commitment to quality and equity.
Nurses are not concerned with prescribing. We really want to meet the needs and advocate for people.
We can do anything, go anywhere. Wherever your passion lies, that's where you can go with nursing.
Nurses bring to the table the ability to think about the patient. That's what they put first, is always the patient.
I wanted to be a nurse because I'll have to even say a little piece of it is watching television shows and the nurse is in the middle. You know, if there was a crisis happening, I was that nurse that ran in and said, I got everything under control. I always wanted to do that.
It's all about reciprocity. It's a constant giving and receiving because that's what I do. That's how I live.
I can't put on my uniform unless I iron it. There's certain things that I did when I first became a nurse that I still do today because I love it and I wake up every day so excited to be a nurse every single day, still 23 years later.
They were making fun of me because they're like, you got those hokas? My friends, they're like, that's how you know the real legit nurses.
We're curious. Like, we lead with curiosity. We lead with love. We don't lead with anger. We don't lead with frustration. We don't lead with fear.
Before you use them, you have to mix them, and you always draw them last. Okay? All right.
So we're here today to talk about the report that came out, Racism in Nursing, by the National Commission on Racism. And we're trying to figure out what exactly can we do to address this historical issue and really position you to become a nurse who is compassionate, caring, and humble enough to address racism in nursing.
The Commission to Address Racism in Nursing came about from two perspectives. One, obviously, the COVID epidemic. Nurses of color, particularly Black, Latinx nurses, and also nurses from the Philippines, were more likely to be put into rooms caring for patients who were suffering from the virus than their white counterparts. The second impact of it was, of course, the murder of George Floyd. Nurses were outraged. They were also out marching with other members of the communities about the injustice that they were seeing. We were also beginning to get a clear picture of the inequities in healthcare, so we wound up creating the National Commission to Address Racism in Nursing.
There are people that still feel that racism shows up with burning crosses and bricks through windows. And we have to show people that racism and discrimination comes in a number of different ways, particularly in nursing.
Racism operates on many levels, both from an individual, internalized, macro, policy level. And so we need to understand that, and all nurses need to understand that.
No one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to treat patients differently if they're black or if they're white or if they have English is not their first language. No one says that intentionally. However, you get into the clinical arena and something happens where the quality of care is different. Now, you could run away from that fact, or you can ask yourself, what am I doing that makes this person's outcomes less than stellar? And what can I do differently?
We know that because of race-based medicine, we do have people of color who lose their limbs much faster than their white counterparts. We know about sickle cell patients and how they're treated as drug seekers.
My practice was in the emergency department. I was indoctrinated and taught to use really stigmatizing language, calling people things like drug seekers or frequent flyers. That was normalized and that was okay. It was perfectly fine for me to say, the guy in room 5 is a drug seeker. I don't believe anything that he says, right? And then now I have transferred my bias to that next person.
We shouldn't have to continue saying that there's a problem. As James Baldwin said, my grandfather was talking about this, my great-grandfather was talking about this. How much of my time do you need for your progress? When we step out of this room and go into the streets, I am not Ashley Graham Perel, triple board certified doctorate degree assistant professor. I am young black girl, right? That's what people see, and that's what I am regarded as, and that is the roots of this country. So I challenge our leaders and our organizations, if you're putting out a statement, there needs to be actionable point of how do we increase the diversity of nursing? How do we decrease the discrepancies of health?
Exactly.
That's a great point.
So this is me in my megaphone. I am nervous to take it to campus because I'm worried it's going to get broken. But yeah, this is a Lego figure of me. At some point, I am going to take it to my office, but only when I get like a ton of bubble wrap and all that good stuff. But yeah, that's one of my other favorite things.
Where's your sister at? Venus! What you doing, Venus? Oh my goodness, so y'all get you.
So in my view, there are several shared nursing values that I espouse to and that I think are really important to highlight. The first one is autonomy. I mean, whether it's bodily autonomy, patient autonomy, family autonomy, community autonomy, people know what they need. And so nursing, another sort of shared value is we're in service to people, the public, communities, right? So it's really ascertaining what does the person or the people in front of you want and need, and how can you connect them to getting those needs met? That's how I think about it. So, social justice and nursing have been mutually aligned since the inception of nursing. Even if you go back before, like, Florence Nightingale, and you go to some of the other unique contributions of Mary C. Cole and other Black nurses who have been doing nursing around the world, it was always to, advance the dignity and the human rights of individuals in the context of health. So, whether you are, LGBTQIA or Black or white or youth or widow or whatever. So it is part of the origin story, regardless of which origin story you understand about nursing, that to serve the public is to operationalize a social justice mission.
In our history, there's an indication that a lot of Black nurses put their own needs aside for the larger cause, for women's rights, for the civil rights era, for that larger movement. One of the first Black nurses to graduate from the program, Mary Mahoney, it's in history about how proud she was to be able to vote. But Black nurses supported this movement and still were not able to work in hospitals unless those hospitals were in those communities and were for Black people. And think about it, years later, there's still this stain that exists where Black nurses are questioned.
When you look at the history of nursing, we start with Florence Nightingale. That's what people assume. But in fact, actually, Florence Nightingale colonized nursing.
If you look at nursing history, Native Americans in their own communities, Black women in their communities, Latina people in their communities, we were already practicing nursing. But when they started to institutionalize it, they said that we couldn't intellectually handle it. When I was in high school, I knew nursing was what I wanted. And then when it was time for me to apply to schools, I sent out, I want to say like 5 applications. And I did them on my own. I had a guidance counselor who wasn't really there for me, but he did reach out and say, we have money to cover your application fees. And I told him how I already sent them out. And he looked at my schools and he said, none of these, he said, I don't think any of these schools are going to accept you. The community college might accept you. And I was devastated because I was like, I want to go to college. What am I going to tell my parents? I didn't know what I was going to do. And all the schools accepted me except for the community college. They put me on a waiting list. This is my school of nursing ID. And this is, I graduated from Columbia in '91. And then this is my Yale badge from when I was a student there. It wasn't until I started working on my PhD that I realized that there were so many barriers that were put for me not to even get to that point. And I don't want to say like being a Black female that nursing wasn't supposed to be for me, but sometimes I feel like I've been in spaces where I felt that way. For us to be able to improve care, we have to work as a team. And I always feel like if you can't treat me with respect, then how does that translate to the care you provide to patients who look like me?
My name is Aaron King. I'm an assistant nurse manager at UC Davis Health in Sacramento, California. I try to relate to people. That's what I try to do right away. We have like the floor fans. Hi, my name is Aaron, spelled with 1 A. Sounds like Aaron, and they get a little chuckle from that. And I say, what brought you in? Where are you from? And usually on that way, you could find some touch point where you connect. Like the bedside, I was like, this is all that you're getting in like 24 hours. And then she's like, really? I was like, yeah. We understand that there's many communities that mistrust healthcare. So any touch point, I have the opportunity to either improve their vision of what healthcare is or to validate their misconceptions of what healthcare is.
Yeah, she had just came out from surgery, so I don't know if she got out.
So I started at the community college local here, going to school in the morning, working at night. I was working at 2 different hotels, doing the whole, double dipping thing. I think I put just the 2 shifts at light duty, and I don't know if we're gonna wanna make it. We have more people of color, or students of color that enter in through the community college route. For many reasons, a lot of us are working while we're going to school. So if you talk about taking 12 units, that's 36 hours. And in addition to that, I had a 40-hour-a-week job. So I'm going to school and working full-time is very busy. So to think that we would achieve these high grades in order to get into some of these bigger universities where you could come out with a bachelor's in nursing is not 100% realistic. I think case by case.
Within the profession, you talk about the career ladder. Sometimes the job description may say a baccalaureate degree or higher. Well, statistically, currently today in the United States, the majority of registered nurses with an associate degree happens to be nurses of color.
Why are we creating this barrier that only bachelor's nurses should be hired? Why does that exist? Like, we need to see the science behind that, right? Because I feel like I was, equally impactful as an associate's nurse practicing at the bedside. I know a lot of associate's nurses that practice at the bedside that are unable to give their talents to these larger institutions.
My sister was sick all the time with childhood illnesses, so I had to travel to the hospital with my mom all the time. When she was born, they only gave my sister 6 months to live. Now, she's almost 60 years old and she's still surviving, and she's still thriving. And the nurses impressed me because they weren't just taking care of my sister, they were taking care of me, they were taking care of my mom, and whoever came with us. So I didn't have a whole lot of role models in my life, but it was the nurses that took care of my sister that, helped mold me and want me to become a nurse.
Are you the last one here? Yeah. So we took out the specimens. Anything else I need to do for the day before we clean up?
No, you're all set.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take care of the rest.
Okay. Very good.
I always wanted to be an RN, but there's different prerequisites you need for an RN and different prerequisites you need for an LVN. At the time when I had my daughter, I just didn't want to be on welfare anymore. I wanted to be a role model for her. So the easiest thing for me to do was to get the LVN. In the 23 years that I've been a nurse as an LVN, applying for the programs to go back to school, I can say I've done it at least a dozen times or more. A lot of schools are going to the lottery system, so I may still have 23 years of experience, and that doesn't mean anything when you put somebody's name in the lottery system.
The registered nurse, more commonly referred to as the professional nurse, is the backbone of the field. The professional nurse's right hand is the licensed practical nurse, the LPN, who has graduated from a 1-year vocational school program. Below that is the nurse's aide, who receives an apprentice-type education and is trained on the job. School for professional nurses can mean anything from 2 years at a junior college to 4 or 5 years at a university.
When you look at the 2 levels of school, LVN programs tend to be very diverse, and RN programs tend not to be diverse. The reason why the LVN programs are more diverse is that people who come in who are racialized as non-white get directed to that track. When I was 16, I got pregnant with my daughter, and I opened up the newspaper, and there was this full ad in the newspaper about the Santa Rosa Junior College vocational nursing program. And it had a big picture of the class, and the class was very diverse. And it talked about the students. It talked about them being single mothers, teenage mothers. So I called the phone number to find out about counseling, and they had me come in, and the counselor said, well, the RN program's only 1 semester longer. You're very smart. Why don't you do that? And I said, great, okay, sign me up. They didn't know I was smart other than I had talked to them for a couple minutes. They didn't know my GPA or any of that information, and simply directing me to the RN program was life-changing. I believe that I was encouraged to become an RN because I am phenotypically white. It really extends beyond just education. Even when you get out and you become a nurse, you'll find that LVNs, LPNs frequently work in skilled nursing, which is really important work, but its pay is much lower. So we miss this opportunity to have this wealth of experience that is guiding our practice. And I also think that it harms our communities and our patients because we know that a diverse nursing workforce improves patient outcomes. So this picture is my mom and dad. And I'll probably get misty because I love them so much. My parents and my elder aunties, who are all Black, they don't go to the hospital without me there. The one time that my mom was in the hospital where I wasn't at her side, she had had surgery on her back, and my dad called me and said, I think mommy's having a stroke. And I'm like, what? She was fine when I left her. What are you talking about? He said, I don't know, she's slurring her speech. She doesn't make any sense. So I'm panicking because I'm 3 hours away. And so I called the charge nurse and I said, there's something seriously wrong with my mom. I need you to check her right now. She's like, she's fine. I think she's over medicated. I said, well, she's not taking anything. Well, she probably brought something from home. And I'm like, listen, you have 30 seconds to call a rapid response or I'm gonna call the operator and do it myself. And it turned out the nurse that was taking care of her gave her a dose of pain medicine that was not for her, it was for the roommate. And so she was overdosing. And they were trying to blame her. You know, like she must be using drugs or bringing things in. So since then, I won't let her be in the hospital at all without me. And that's shameful. We should not be in that situation.
People address us and say, haven't you done enough work? Haven't we come far enough? It's life or death. That's why we do this. When we're at the bedside as patients, as loved ones, when we see the differences in care, when we see that who takes care of our parents or who takes care of our loved one impacts whether they live or die, that's why we do this. It's life or death.
To these points, it's okay and expected now that we're going to make errors in math, in medication administration, in decision-making in other areas. But we won't allow ourselves to normalize the fact that we're also going to make errors based on stereotypes and based on assumptions. Implicit bias is a product of our natural cognitive processes, how our brains work, how we're wired, split-second decisions that we're making we're not even aware of. And we infuse onto that what's going on in our social world. The problem with bias is it's so deeply connected to who we are as a person, our personal identity, that we can't extrapolate out the fact that just like we make a math error, we can make and do make automatic assumptions about people all the time. It's the same thing. It's an error. It's a mental error. And it comes from much more complicated roots, right? Centuries of oppression of an entire people.
Look at the ways we're scripted for inequality in the United States. We're set up to give unequal care. We're literally neurologically scripted to see what's not there.
In America, we had the challenge of centuries of having not done the work of addressing the harm created by this fallacy, this belief system. And building our structures and institutions on that belief, which is in a false hierarchy of human value.
There's an epiphenomenon of race that is defined by the history that makes our nation today. And some of those historical scripts are still operating.
Grandfather Sun, Grandmother Moon. Today, we're in the moon of the bear, so we ask for blessings for our bear nation. For the air, the fire, the earth, and the water, for all the elements that provide life and give life. Water is life. Okay, Tanome Moma. We are all related, all my relations. These relatives here have offered tobacco for us to be here today and to help with this presentations.
The data and the research that we see today, it's all negative. It's all negative for Native populations, and we don't hardly see any of the good, and that's what we're trying to change.
The energy we asked for today to help with this presentation. And
Sonia reached out to me a couple years ago in wanting to create a group of Indigenous nurses, trying to connect and advance the work that they were doing to not only diversify the profession, but also to take care of their community. What I did was I really just gave them a place to land, encouraged them to become a chapter, to gain support, and to build a community within the Oklahoma Nurses Association. And that's what they've done.
She was like, girl, you should have seen us last night. We were changing everything.
All right, so good morning, and welcome back to the 2023 ONA Annual Convention. So please help me welcome Sonia Frazier and Taloma Sharkey.
So I'm going to take you on a journey with me. Imagine being a 7 and 8 year old little girl out in your front yard playing, and a vehicle pulls up, and people get out of the vehicle, and you don't know what they're saying, and they're saying things to your parents, to your grandparents, and they grab the children, load them up in the car, and drive off. Everybody's screaming, everybody's crying, because nobody knows what's happening. So these little girls get taken far away, and then some of them get loaded on trains and get taken even further. So once they get to this place, they're stripped of their clothing, their hair is cut, they start getting beat, they start getting doused with lye powder, they get scrubbed with wired brushes, get hit in the head, slapped, told to quit speaking that dirty language. And the youngest one is 3 years old that this is happening to. And it only gets worse at nighttime, because that's when the abuse, the sexual abuse, the spiritual abuse, all of the abuse starts happening. Oklahoma had the highest rate of boarding schools. And so the story I share with you today is my mother's story. And my mother, she's gonna be 80 next year. And she's just now sharing her story with me because she hasn't been able to talk about the things that have happened to her. And growing up with her as a mother, she was a very harsh woman. She would have these moments of what I now understand as depression, where she would be in bed for days and she wouldn't get out. All the things that you see, the alcoholism, mental illness, is all affected by this from our history. And that's why it's important for everybody, especially nurses, to know this history and know our culture, know the people you're serving. Culture is our prevention. If we can bring our culture into the healthcare, that is going to be our prevention.
Morning, Sonia.
Well, this morning I want to go ahead and do a little ceremony for you, which I call like a water ceremony. I want to help our people heal, help you heal from all the things that we've been through, and we're still here. And I want to honor you in that way. And I'm very blessed to have you for my mother, and I'm thankful for you. And so I want to honor you with this water ceremony. A lot of our Indigenous stories begin with our creation story. And some of our creation stories begin with women, and they were the first Indigenous nurses.
Yeah, that water feels good.
And so for us, Indigenous nurses are the natural healers of this land because we come from this land. I learned this from an old nurse. She used to have us do this on our patients that were on a vent in ICU. She said to always take care of their feet. Because she said that was so important for their connection to earth.
I wonder if they do that these days, no?
No, not that I know of, nope. That's one of the traditions we lost. So that's why it's so important to do it today, so we can get that reconnection going. We were pretty healthy communities before colonization. Our culture was a part of that. And as colonization happened, all of that got taken away. And even the rights to the way we ate, the healthy way we ate, that all was taken away.
Diversity and spirituality, I feel like, go hand in hand because you're respectful of another person's spirit. Even when we talk about racism, it's an injury to the soul, it's an injury to the spirit.
Our people, they don't trust the educational system. They don't trust the healthcare system. They don't trust the social services system. And this is all related to the historical trauma that we have gone through.
Because of racism, because of discrimination, they won't speak up for themselves. They won't say what's going on with their bodies. I do feel like we're missing something about humbling ourselves in nursing. And it's something I feel like it's hard to teach. In our ways, our culture, it's known. We're only here to serve each other. I feel like we learn from each other. We're here to serve each other in all kinds of ways because all of us have different gifts.
Oh, thank you. I love your earring. Have you enjoyed our organization? Okay, we have a booth out there if you want to sign up.
Well, it makes me feel incredibly proud that they feel that they really have developed power, that they have been able to tell their story and that they're comfortable in. Because we can say that we want to be a diverse organization, but if people don't feel safe, they don't stay, and we don't stay a diverse organization.
Looking at our history and ANA always being thought of as a progressive organization, you would have thought that during the 60s and 70s, it would have been a great opportunity to stand up and to promote equality, and that just wasn't present. It wasn't until the late 40s that nurses of color could be members of the American Nurses Association. It wasn't until the early 60s that we could actually hold office.
At that time, American Nurses Association was not focusing on any of the topics that were specific to the Black community. Dr. Betty Smith Williams, she told us this story. They went to the board and demanded that there be a focus on some of these issues that we're having in the Black community, the disparities that we're seeing. And they said, if you want to focus on those problems, start your own organization. And so they did.
There was a meeting at one of the Black nurses' homes, and there was a decision that they needed to form the MBNA. They've done a lot to support Black nurses, particularly as it relates to them advancing in nursing and being able to be seen as bona fide nurses.
The minority nursing organizations were formed because the nurses felt that they were not being heard. This is something that we need to correct and that we should correct. And part of that is, not only holding out the olive branch, but also listening. What are some of the issues that you're seeing that maybe we have
Would anyone like to start?
Being a Black nurse, being a Black student, you feel like you always have to go above and beyond, even if you're already doing what's like, that's what I came for, this is what I'm doing. You have to do way more than the other person just to be seen, just to be noticed.
In my practice, everyone's always surprised to see like how young I am, and like I'm in such a specialty that's so highly respected. Like I've had doctors, like I'm in the room wearing royal blue and they're like, oh, like, are you the CNA or are you the respiratory therapist? And I'm like, I'm wearing blue. I'm a nurse. I'm not anything else.
People don't know my identity until they hear me speaking Spanish, for instance. That'll come up a lot in the work setting. For me, the ouches are around when people make assumptions about our intelligence based with language proficiency, or for us, we're getting told like, oh, you're housekeeping. Could you get the nurse? Because you think you're here to pick up the garbage.
In the beginning, when you were a student, a lot of people wrote you off because of where you came from or what you've been through. I was actually a teen mom, and in my class, a lot of times I've had teachers say, this might not be for you. Maybe you have too much going on. You weren't sure, is it racism or is it just the way things are?
And as a student, what do, right? Yeah. You're not the person in power, you're a student. And like you had said, I saw it specifically towards you. You were probably I think the only Black student in the class. But what do, right? I grew up in a mostly white community, so we didn't deal with that because we didn't see it. And so seeing it for the first time, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to call it.
Yeah, but what you said about not knowing how to name it, that was my same experience. As a nursing student, even as a new nurse, it's like you feel like something is wrong, but when you can't name it, you can't stand up for yourself.
I think part of the problem too is because the population of faculty is mostly white women, they're noticing the skills of people who look like them. You don't see the encouragement to go back to school. You don't see you don't have that push that a white nurse like myself had.
There are a lot of policies and practices in nursing that we haven't even begun to address that are rooted. You just know they're rooted in racism. But if we start asking these critical questions, how is this policy going to help us diversify the workforce? To what extent does this policy prevent us from doing that?
So the stopper is easy. Open it like this, and you're gonna have this in there.
The 2 strikes, you're out. If you're taking a course in nursing and you fail it, that's strike 1. And then the next semester, you're gonna have a certain level of fear going into this course. And what is that fear doing to you? How is it undermining your ability to study? You fail the second course, you're out. And why is that so horrific? Because in nursing school, you can't just pick up, go to another school, and graduate. You have to start all your nursing courses over again. The financial implications alone is huge. And we're not even talking about how devastating that is to one's psyche.
In the middle, turn it around, never touch the plunger, always from the stopper.
Because this one you're gonna get rid of it.
Exactly.
We shouldn't say, well, this individual can't cut it. They met your admission criteria. Your admission criteria says that we believe that you have the ability to be successful in this program. You come in, you're not successful. Well, what are the other factors that could be contributing to the student's success? Why do we always zero in on the student when it could be that the institution doesn't have the resources to support the student? It could be that the institution doesn't provide the faculty development that's needed for faculty to be able to teach to a wide array of students. We don't have those conversations.
Registration is going to be in front. They're still kind of setting up out that door, yeah. Capital City Black Nurses Association is a local chapter of the National Black Nurses Association. creating this program, Breaking Down Barriers, I'm really targeting those people in pre-nursing. So those people that are getting ready to apply to nursing school and really bringing in these conversations to them. Hello, is this on? Can you guys hear me? We're good? All right, cool. So hello, everyone. Welcome to Breaking Down Barriers. My name is Aaron King. I am on the executive board for Capital City Black Nurses, one of the hosts. Everyone talks about diversity. It's not just like a commercialized thing that we just want to see more people on the billboards or whatever, but we actually know that that influences outcomes for patients, right? One of the biggest things that we could do is really diversify the healthcare workforce, because people sharing the same background are less likely to be biased. Not to say they're ultimately not going to be, but this really helps overall. It changes it.
All shades of the rainbow. That's what Breaking Down Barriers is at, so we can all build health equity in our communities, and this venue helps with that. So with that,
it's a simple thing of like a Mexican immigrant has a kidney transplant, and a white nurse goes in there and says, "Oh, how's it going?" "I'm fine, I'm good." And a Spanish-speaking person goes in there, asks the same question, and they get a litany of like, what is happening? He needs this, he needs that, he doesn't understand this. That is going to affect the care, and you're not even aware.
California population is 40% Latinos, and less than 10% is the nursing population. So guess what those patients need? They need someone to speak the language, someone that can they can look up and say, "I feel comfortable, I can speak to you." And if anyone has told you that you can't do it, then you're gonna tell them, "Sí se puede," okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Marina. Thank you. And the other group that we have the pleasure of.
After the murder of George Floyd, a lot of corporations doubled down on diversity in hiring, on diversity, equity, inclusion. That seems to be lagging now. 60% of chief diversity officers have left big companies in the last few years. Corporate investments in DEI efforts have stalled, according to Glassdoor. So what's going on?
I came here as a full professor. I came here knowing that I wanted to be a full professor. I came here knowing that I wanted the protections of tenure. I came here because I knew that I was going to make a lot of unpopular decisions and really ask the school to fundamentally think about their commitment to the things that they have written. And you can't do that if you don't have the tools or the vestiges of power. And that means you have a budget. That means that you have the position. That means that you have some decision-making authority somewhere. It's not a hearts and mind thing. It's not a, we're lucky to have you on our faculty and treat you like decoration. Oh yeah, we can, trot you out when it's convenient. If you're not gonna share power, I don't understand how it's an anti-racist approach.
So how can I be helpful to you? I mean, I know that you are interested in many of the things that I am because I work in reproductive health rights and justice. And the bulk of diversity within our profession is at the entry to practice level. We still have a lot of the Black, Indigenous, Latina nurses either languishing in either ancillary professions like medical assistants or community health workers or LVNs or LPNs. So one of the reasons, just by proxy of who I am in the world, I have to mentor the next generation of individuals because it's part of my job. Number two, people can't be what they don't see. Or is your DNP work separate? Because, for some people, it's a line. We really have to start thinking about workforce development as an intergenerational activity that is the responsibility of everyone, right? Too many people think that the work of equity, diversity, inclusion is the work of my office. Like that, those people will take care of that issue. But actually, if you really think about it, the work of equity, diversity, and inclusion, at least in nursing, should be everybody's work. However, I can be helpful to help move you along and amplify your work more on a national stage. If that's something that you want to be able to do, I can help you do that. I have asked for help in my 5 jobs. And I've asked for white women to assist me in taking on the interim roles of the Manning Price Spratland Center for Anti-Racism and/or the interim role of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I have been told, no, that is not right for white women
to lead a center named for 2 Black women. I said, oh, so you haven't established what your role is in racial equity and justice work. So therefore, when somebody actually asks you for help, you cannot help them. That is something that can be a thing. Some white people feel as though being an ally means that they can demean and belittle other white people for not being as progressive as they are. So they spend a lot of time getting cookies from Black allies because look at how good of a white person I'm being because I called out that white person around their racism. And I'm like, but don't you think it's your job to help them fix that? Like, where's the redemptive narrative in that?
My thing is, I want to get a doctorate.
Yeah, understood. And nursing is shared work. We work in shifts for a reason. So behaving in collaborative and ally-like ways is fundamental to our educational structure, either from how we cohort our education. You don't come in as a nursing student by yourself. You come in with a cohort, right? We teach from day one. You are going to be broken up into, small groups to work on projects with strangers, and that's going to be random, because that's part of teaching the skill set of how do you work with people of difference. It's fundamental, day one of nursing school. Nursing has the power to change the world. I believe this will on my entire genome. If we could have the courage to understand, to let go of the power that we have in the now for the collective power we could have in the future. Sound good, my dear?
Sounds so good.
All right, my dear.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Love you too, bye.
Bye. This is my life. I try to explain to people. I sit on Zoom all day. It's a whole situation. How you doing?
This zero-sum mentality, this idea that if people of color get something, it's gonna mean that whites lose it. It's an undergirding myth that goes along with the myth of racial hierarchy. Caring is what this is about, and nurses can carry this message of healing, transformation from our legacy of racial hierarchy. They can embody and carry that message for others.
Dr. Peggy Chin, Dr. Christina Nerity, they both came to me and said that they wanted to do something to address racism in nursing. They weren't sure of exactly what, but they wanted to be able to have Zoom sessions. They wanted to be able to have the platform for nurses of color. I said, we have to do something, and I agreed to do it. George Floyd just happened, but I was also on my own personal journey at my university where I was finishing up on my PhD. 2 years prior, if 2 white nurses came to me and said, let's talk about racism, I would have said no. But because I knew Peggy and I had an experience in class where you stood up for me, I trusted you right away. When I met Peggy Chin, it was in one of my very last semesters. When I first saw her, I'm just gonna be honest, I was like, oh, here's another white woman. How am I gonna get through this class? She did something that others have never done for me.
The purpose of the class was for everybody to develop a theoretical framework for their dissertation.
And I was able to narrow down that I wanted to talk to women who experienced severe complications during childbirth, Black women. We have the worst maternal mortality rates. We're 3 to 4 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause, twice as likely to come close, but still nobody was researching us. So I'll never forget, we were on a discussion board. Everyone in the class was writing, saying what they wanted to do. So I was excited because it was like it clicked. Wrote in a discussion board, this is what I want to do. I want to talk to Black women. I want to learn about their experience. Another classmate writes on the discussion board, I'm tired of people playing the victim. And then she goes on to talk about her own family members and how her family member traveled here by themselves such and such years ago, and they were able to do it. So how come we can't do it? And I was on fire.
I just posted a message that this is something that we need to talk about more. And I did, and I decided that I needed to be really clear that this was racism, that Lucinda's work was valuable, that it was needed because we did not really know what was underlying this disparity. And so we did spend most of the rest of the semester in the class talking about racism relative to everybody's work.
By her even just acknowledging it, it just made me feel that what I was feeling and experiencing was real. And I never, from undergrad, graduate, now I'm here in this PhD program, I never had anyone stand up. And for me, that's what nursing is about. That when we see whether someone is ill, someone's having any kind of challenges in their life, is to not to say, oh, just give up, it's over, to do something.
It was a pivotal moment in my career as well because it really gave me the determination to not overlook this ever and to be very strong in speaking out. Lucinda, how do you feel about continuing to host? And
I think I think it's good. I think when you're a nurse of color, there's so many things that we suppress and we never bring to light. And one thing that I learned is that if you don't address it, it stays within you.
I will give a brief example. There was a patient, she was an elderly Asian woman. When I came on to my shift at 3 p.m., her bell was ringing off the wall. And this was going on for hours, and the nurse was trying to quickly give me a report. And so I said, hold on. I stopped her giving a report, and I went to the patient's room. I said, oh, how can I help you? Lo and behold, she spoke my parents' language, which is Vietnamese. So she wasn't Chinese, and this is what the white nurse was telling me. And so she just wanted to go to the bathroom. We were going to the bathroom, and I went back to the report. And so she said, oh, this patient has urinary incontinence. And that's when I just had to stop her. And I said, I just took her to the bathroom. When I spoke to her, she was able to tell me that the nurses were not taking her to the bathroom. She just needed that extra hand. And so that's what really empowered me to speak up in the meetings. So maybe that someone could hear what I'm saying and relate to it, and then that could impact their practice as well.
It really shows how we have to look at people as being human. And it just takes trying to find a way to communicate. We're changing the date to Thursdays at 7 p.m.
When we have those wince moments, when someone says something that should not be said, or if you say something, it's never too late to correct that. When you have that heaviness in your chest that you can't get rid of, that you can't shake after you hear something, that's an indication to you in your soul that you have to take some action.
Until we can make that culture shift, I don't think we're gonna move the needle.
Well, your iBias, program is one step closer because it's intentionally making students say, what have I done? Reflect on your treatment for the day.
So what we're doing with iBias is, and this is not rocket science, it's the same sort of surgical checklist. It's count the number of clamps that are put in, count the number of clamps that are taken out. It's a checklist, it's a pause. So we're asking students every day in their clinical education courses, you have to demonstrate 2 bias interrupting skills, and then you have to answer 2 reflection questions. Did you make any assumptions you didn't have evidence for? And did you see anybody else doing that? So iBias is about changing behaviors of individuals so that they've developed these habits. Hopefully, when they're at the bedside now, they're stopping and thinking about what are the assumptions that are going on here.
Coming to UC Davis and Betty Irene, that was actually my first time being exposed to conversations around social determinants of health and how race impacts outcomes and the disparities that we see in certain communities.
We prioritize racial identity development in the context of the history of race relations in the United States so that we can together build the capacity to doggedly pursue equity as an institution.
This belief that Betty Irene Moore School of Nursing is creating an equity-minded nurse is really trained to look at our marginalized communities, so not just like our Black or brown, but also LGBTQ, those with disabilities, mental health
As far as training nurses, right, there can be 4 different nurses. You can give them the same information, but equity-minded means, okay, I have this one, English is not her first language. I have another one, she has a processing where she cannot read and understand, so I need to show her how to do things. You can do the same education for all of them and say, this one's not successful, this one's not successful. A nurse that is very conscious of equity will attune and adapt for the benefit of the nurse, because the goal is for them to succeed. And I think it's the same thing with patients. An equity mind is going to really take into consideration and adjust the discharge plan according to their needs. That's what's equity, because we want them to succeed.
Dr. Jean-Marie Garcia, she did our Nursing 206. We called it Woke 206 because it was like we'd have these deep conversations about race and gender.
There's not racist or not racist, woke or not woke. We are all on a developmental journey that is informed by our experiences.
You had talked about that study that found that one of the reasons why folks don't engage in anti-racism work or conversations around race is more just that fear of being paralyzed with fear of getting it wrong.
And in my observation, you're gonna make mistakes. And our society around issues of race and difference is such a high-stakes conversation that you could get your hand slapped or you could get expelled from that social community. So that skill of developing a community that you find and stick with is so important.
Okay, and then for the advanced practice?
I would do 45. We're just so far behind.
This is work that is lifelong, that is ongoing. It needs to be done in community. It's not sustainable to do it by yourself. You will not see the scripts that are internalized for yourself. Somebody else usually sees them. And if you're in relationship with a diverse group of people, professionally or otherwise, then you have access to identifying what you could be doing better.
So we just need to start bringing people in now. Okay. Make what? Our mission is targeted towards outreach in the Black community. And Nicole, for many years, was helping us with different things. She's like, oh yeah, I'll help with this, I'll help with that. Y'all do this. And I was like, why don't you just join? Why don't you join as a member? And she's like, oh no, this is your space. It's like, no, we're inviting you in. Like, come and join with us.
Fluster McFlustersons.
I love you so much. What makes me really value your friendship in particular as a partner in change is I like your approach to this work because we've definitely seen it being done wrong. I like that you are not forceful, you are not coming in with the cure and you're gonna give the answer, but that you really fill in the spaces, and that shows like your humility. And I think that's the cornerstone of our work.
Most of my life, my help looked like, you know, and I trips to countries that didn't ask me to come, showing up with the help that I believed they need and offering it, and going home, having spent most of my money on a plane ticket and feeling like I really made a difference. And for me, that's the difference between, hi, I'm Nicole, I'm your nurse today, here's what we're gonna be doing. And hi, I'm Nicole, I'm gonna be your nurse today, what's most important to you? And how can I help you feel the most safe and heard and seen?
You know, we were talking about kind of the continuum of like empathy, sympathy, and compassion. Like the very base level is pity, like, oh, that's terrible. And then sympathetic is like, oh, bad things are happening to you. And then empathy is like, oh, I really feel bad that that's happening to you. But the action word there is compassion. That takes the empathy, the sympathy, the feeling that something is wrong, and then it empowers you to do something about it. And I think that compassion is powerful and a way forward for every person from any group.
I get the default that I'm the norm, and that so therefore I can be whatever I want to be. Because I'm everything. I'm a nurse, I can be a doctor, I'm this, I'm that. I get the assumption of a baseline. And a baseline in healthcare is the number by which everything else is measured, and not just measured, but deemed bad or good. How do we change the baseline to not mean white European culture?
I would love to see white folks who ask one another a different sort of question. If we are reproducing inequality as a workforce, we need to take as much responsibility for that as we take for the intent we say we have or don't have. So I don't want to hear, I didn't mean to do that, or we're really good people, Jan. We weren't there for this inequality and the social construction which precedes us for 400 years. Those things are true, but you're not just responsible for your intent, you're responsible for the outcome as well.
Solutions for me would be about telling our stories because they don't exist. Most people couldn't tell you a pioneer Latino nurse, but we exist.
I think that as a student of color, it's very important to see like teachers that look like you. Like it took me, like you weren't my professor until like junior year. So I went through 3 years of college before seeing someone that was in a high position that looks like me.
I think one of the things as white allies that we can really do is even within our own white space, when something's said, you need to call it out. And I feel like because other white people feel safe in that environment, they say a lot more things than when they're in mixed presence, right?
And I think that we all have to realize that wherever we're at in our knowledge about racism, wherever we're at in our nursing careers, that we have to think about what can I do where I'm at.
Hey, y'all. If people don't want to fix nursing, it's not like we're not going to be changed anyway. We don't exist in a vacuum. The thing that keeps me hopeful is that nursing is not answerable just to nursing. Whether it's physicians or doulas or medical assistants or other paraprofessionals or other people, we're accountable to a lot more than just ourselves. So if we don't fix the problem of racism in nursing, somebody will. I would prefer it be us.
We have to get this right. This aligns with what we believe in, it aligns with our mission, and if we address racism, it's all boats rise. Getting it right entails partnering and collaboration, listening to nurses of color, also listening to white nurses, because there are nurses that are not of color that are steadily in this work. They're doing amazing things. And we have to be bold and intentional and unwavering. It's a very tricky environment to navigate, but we're undeterred.
You got black midwives in the house. Let's go. Come on, Talita.
When we talk about maternal health, you hear the numbers, but it's not real. But then when you see how that person kind of shows up, when you hear their stories, I think art helps us kind of see beyond just the words and just the numbers, but also helps us see how people are real. I don't know, I guess it's like they're being honored. That's what someone once told me, that I'm honoring their story.
You know you're a nurse when you can change a BEM and get right back to lunch, like, ooh, this is good.
You know you're a nurse when over Thanksgiving dinner you can talk about a small bowel obstruction and a patient vomiting stool and chuckle and everybody else stops and is like, and you're just like.
You know you're a nurse when you're on vacation and you're checking out people's veins and everything else. And you're like, ooh, he would be a good site. Let me get that. All right.
During COVID, when my mother was hospitalized, it was a nurse who was able to let us know the day before my mother died to say, I will FaceTime with all the family members, all her grandkids. And for over a half an hour, the only request from my family members was they did not want to see the life support, the vent. This nurse, for over a half an hour, kept her iPad on my mother's eyes and forehead. You gotta love nurses.